And how many believe it was brought down by explosive controlled demolition? A lot of you. Okay, we have a problem, don't we? What's our problem? Let's take a look. Did Qaeda have access to what had to be one of the most highly secure buildings in the country, really? I mean, after all, this building had tenants: the IRS, the CIA, the Department of Defense, Giuliani's Office of Emergency Management, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which, by the way, lost thousands of files related to hundreds of cases it was pursuing against Wall Street companies like Enron and WorldCom. We want a real investigation there, too. Did Al-Qaeda have access to high-tech nanothermite? Well, we're talking about this is why you hear out there, inside job, right? It's pretty apparent to us. The implications, we're not blind to those implications at AE 911 Truth, but we don't pursue them because we are technical and building professionals, but you have to pursue them. And we have resources, actually, in the back. There's books where you can pursue some of these wider implications. David Ray Griffin has written a number of excellent books. I highly recommend New Pearl Harbor Revisited, which we have. 9/11 Contradictions is excellent. The 9/11 Commission Report, Omissions and Distortions. Extraordinary research that he's done. And unfortunately, the World Trade Center Twin Towers offers even far greater evidence than what we saw in Building 7. So let's take a look. First, the structure is unique. We have a tube within a tube, an exterior perimeter bearing wall system, really, because we're collecting all of the columns on the inside in the core area, and then we're spanning between that core and the perimeter with floor truss systems. But the core columns are immense. There's 47 of them, solid steel at the bottom, 52 inches by 22 inches, and 36 inches by 16 inches. And 14 inches on center, I think, 14-inch box columns, solid steel almost at the bottom again, thinning to the lightest portion up at the top. Quarter-inch thick steel is pretty thin because the forces that need to be carried and supported the biggest forces are down at the bottom. So this is an incredible steel structure. The interior is a tower structure within a structure. So any pancaking collapse in the structure around the outside of the core would have left the core standing 1,368 feet in the air. There's no plausible explanation about the collapse of the core, especially at almost freefall acceleration, which we'll talk about. NIST claims 1,800-degree fires. Well, there's no evidence for fires over 400 or 600 degrees in the steel that they selected and did paint analysis from, and from the areas where the airplanes actually hit. There's no evidence. But let's say there was. Like those hotter office fires we saw, like in Beijing, China, that one I just showed you. This is a 100,000-ton heat sink. It conducts the heat throughout the skyscraper steel structure. There's away from the source. That's why they've really never come down. So when we look then at the evidence for explosive controlled demolition in the Twin Towers, we note that we have all of the typical features of a controlled demolition, but with some interesting changes. Starting with, we have an onset of destruction not at the base of the structure, but at the point of jet plane impacts, because we want to blame the collapse of the building on the jet plane impacts, so we start the explosions there. We have a straight down symmetrical collapse, but everything's blowing outside the footprint, as opposed to an implosion like Building 7, classic controlled demolition. So you can see even in the photograph already what's going on there. We have squibs, or these mistimed explosions that are going off several floors well down below this collapse that we'll take a look at. And we already talked about molten iron, the evidence of thermite in it and in the dust. That all is to be kept in mind for these Twin Towers as well. Well, let's start and see if there's a sudden onset of destruction at the location of jet plane impacts. And note that it's produced by explosions, for which we have here, again, sounds and flashes heard and seen by witnesses. Why? Well, in 2005, we just found out that Thomas von Essen, the city's fire chief commissioner, city's fire commissioner, ordered the collection of the oral histories from 500 of his first responders and 12,000 pages of testimony. And it was kept under lock and key until 2005 when the New York Times won the lawsuit against the city to release it. Why was the city hiding this information? Did it have anything to do with the fact that over 100 of them were reporting sounds of explosions and seeing flashes of light? Let's listen. We felt the ground shake. You could see the tower sway, and then it just came down. All of a sudden, the ground just started shaking. Shortly before it came down, I remember feeling the ground shake. Why is the ground shaking before the onset of collapse? That's supposed to be a gravitational collapse with large gradual deformations, 1,700 feet away from the witnesses who were on the ground. Somewhere around the middle of the World Trade Center, there was this orange and red flash coming out. Initially one flash, and then it just kept popping all the way around the building. The building had started to explode. It seemed like on television, they blow up these buildings. It seemed like it was going all the way around, all these explosions. Let's take a look and see what they're talking about. Here's a known controlled demolition. There's building number 1, the North Tower. You can see that there's bouts of explosions in normal controlled demolitions that can start anywhere you want them to start. They don't have to start at the base of the building. It can be engineered in many different ways. That's when I saw the building coming down. I heard a pop, pop, pop when I heard that friggin' noise. Saw a brief number of light sources being emitted from inside the building between floors 10 and 15. I saw low-level flashes. The building was blowing out on all 4 sides. You actually heard the pops. You know, you heard the pops of the building. With each popping sound, there was initially an orange and then a red flash came out of the building. It would just go around the building on both sides. Here's the South Tower, adjacent to another controlled demolition. Look at just get a feel for the comparison here. We'll do a few of these. Here's another one. That's the same one. Here's another one. I got it hidden. There we go. Okay, there's more evidence. Let's see. I saw flash, flash, flash. Then it looked like the building came down. I thought the terrorist planted an explosive somewhere in the building. A loud crackling explosive. Another loud boom, upper floors, and then a series of smaller explosions which appeared to go completely around the building at the upper floors. Before it came down, I saw low-level flashes. What did these guys experience?
We started floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was like, if they had detonated. What do you take down a building?
All the way down.
That's helpful testimony. Here are some news reporters.
Anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under-infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
The entire building has just collapsed as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it's folded down on itself and it is not there anymore.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble.
A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way!
And all of a sudden, it was this big explosion.
There was another big explosion. An hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much, much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that. People were just standing.